you guys please welcome to the stage Jasmine Kumar.
From the moment we're born into this complex world, we're taught to sort. This is so that we can make sense of the world around us. It's been a habit of humans for thousands of years, ingrained in our genes for good reason. Early humans needed to distinguish and remember the difference between friend or foe, poison or edible, and danger or safety as a means of survival. Parents still teach their kids this skill early on because it helps children understand the vast world in order for them to process information quickly. This is why we sort and label our stuff, color code our notes, and make playlists based on if we're studying or exercising. We like this order in our lives. However, sometimes we need it and other times it's demanded of us, implemented into places where it's more redundant than efficient. In many aspects of life, such as science, nature, and objects, categorization makes things manageable and helps us navigate the detailed and fast-paced world around us. But when we begin to categorize people, it quickly becomes problematic. I often wonder, can we really categorize everyone in this world into 16 personality types or 12 zodiac signs? Can people's habits and interests really be reduced down to chic, intellectual, or niche? And are hobbies themselves reflective of a whole person's life? When I told my friends my mom recently picked up the popular mobile game Clash Royale, most of them laughed in my face. My mom is work-oriented, focused, and never has once given in to my nagging, asking if she would play any video game with me or my sister. Even when my mom first asked or proposed downloading it with complete seriousness, I laughed and kept asking to confirm that she wasn't joking. Most people see the target demographic and player base as a game for teenagers and young people based on the marketing, online presence, and general style of the game. But my mom, who doesn't fall into this demographic, surprisingly enjoys playing the strategy game and, in my opinion, has accumulated a substantial amount of trophies. I didn't see her in the box that I had put her in, instead boiling her down to a workaholic type who doesn't have fun. Some categories are straightforward, such as age groups or professions, and some can be helpful and keep order in our society. However, many categories are just made up. They are based on superficial traits or born out of stereotypes. As soon as a person is placed into a category, we risk seeing only the label and not their individuality. Each one of us is a complex combination of genetic traits, individual experiences, and emotions that cannot be boxed into a single category. Our desire to measure and quantify is an extension of this. We want to capture the world in numbers and labels for clarity and control with no nuance. Even emotions that are very personal experiences become quantified in measures. People say things like, "I love you to the moon and back," or as in the Bee Gees song, "How deep is your love?" This shows how much we value measurement and categorization, even for things we know are intricate and immeasurable. Yet, it is precisely our differences, our unique experiences, perspectives, and quirks that enrich our relationships and communities. Valuing people as individuals rather than spokespeople, or representatives for groups leads to more fairness and genuine connection, creating a quilt of diversity stitched together, each square its own pattern, and all of them with the same number of intricacies. By moving away from rigid categories, we can celebrate uniqueness and resist the limitations that stereotypes impose. I'm not saying categorizing is not helpful or natural. This habit, which really is innately human, has always helped us to stay organized and survive in this ever-growing world for thousands of years. But when you begin to measure people on emotions, personalities, and interests and box them accordingly, it can replace individuality with stereotypes and promote unfairness. Seeing people beyond conventional and stereotypical groups is key to recognizing what makes each one of us special. So stop boxing yourself into the limits that others have made. You're not an amalgamation of labels stuck in a body. You are just you. You create your own narrative, your own path, and your own truth. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much. Okay, let's go ahead and bring up Andrew Lanham. Our guest today won the Drama and Latitude Screenwriting Award at the 2010 Austin Film Festival. He then earned the prestigious Nickel Fellowship for Screenwriting from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, And 16 years later, he has 5 feature films to his name, including an adaptation of the memoir Just Mercy, and a piece of the Marvel Universe, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. In that span of time, he's been nominated for a Hugo Award, a Bradbury Award, and an Image Award from the NAACP. Please welcome, all the way from California, Andrew Lanham. Back over the chairs. All right.
Hello. Pretty good. How are you?
All right. Well, we should probably begin with kind of a softball question, which is what exactly does a screenwriter do, or what does that mean? Tell us a little bit about what that entails, or maybe what also it does not entail.
A screenwriter writes the script that is the basis for the movie you end up seeing on the screen or the television show. And for a feature film, that script is usually around 120 pages. A typical screenplay page is not going to give you any information about what the character is thinking or what's happening outside the world in their lives beyond exactly what you are seeing on the page. It's a blueprint that hopefully will inspire 100 other people who are all led by the director at the end of the day in order to create the film. So it's very much meant to be like a constantly in motion living document that is never really done in a sense because it's specifically designed to become something else.
All right, so what is something that you, as a screenwriter, then cannot control? That is, you put something on the page, but then...
I can control nothing other than what I put on the page, which I suppose is the same with any creative writing. It's like all you have is what you're thinking up in your heart, what you're trying to say from your soul, what means something to you that's going down onto the page, and you can't control how anyone is going to react to it or not react to it. So I think you have to strive with all writing to kind of find why you're writing it for yourself, regardless of what the outcome might be. And it's even more acutely true, I suppose, with a screenplay. Even if you're a playwright is often sitting there throughout rehearsals as the play is being developed, and they're meant to stay exactly on the written words that you've designed. I will often watch a scene. I wrote a movie, a Western called The Kid, and this actor, Dane DeHaan, who was incredible, played Billy the Kid, and he memorized my dialogue down to the commas. Like, if you look at my dialogue, like when I put a period, he stops, and when I had a run-on, he runs on. And then Ethan Hawke, who I think has, over the past few decades, become one of the greatest actors alive, he memorized my dialogue clearly and then changed so many little things around, and it was almost like watching like a musician. It's like watching two different musicians who have a completely different approach. So it's 100% my dialogue, but he moved lines, he like paraphrased, he added pauses, he like did all of these cool things where it was almost like jazz. Both are equally, one is not more valid than the other, but it's completely out of my hands what anyone is going to do with any of it once I hit send.
Could you tell us a bit about what you were like in high school and when you realized what it is you wanted to do, and then some of your steps that you took in order to get there?
Yeah, I've always been a voracious reader, and I've always been obsessed with movies and watched everything. I had quite severe Tourette syndrome as a kid and high schooler, and I never swore, which is like the most extreme, like 10%, but it was pretty extreme in every other way, and I had ADHD and OCD along with that. And I kind of learned at an early age to convert that, like to use it in a humorous way in order to get along well with people. And so I was, I guess, unique with someone making so many weird noises all the time that I had friends and I didn't feel like ostracized because of what I was going through. But it was definitely a huge formative thing that caused me a lot of times to just want to stay in the house and watch movies over and over and over again. So I always knew something with film. Like a year or two after school, where I majored in communication and film theory, so a lot of breaking film down, I decided that I was going to try to get into a graduate school program for screenwriting. I moved back home to Maine. I got a job. I lived in my parents' house, and I said, I'm going to give it a year, and I'm just going to write every single day and do this part-time job in the evenings so I have some money, and I'm just going to write, and I'm going to write, and I'm going to write, and I'm going to write. And I think there's a lot of writers who become successful where they found a way to give themselves the time to get started. If you're lucky enough in like your high school years to like have the time to do that or make the time to do that, like the sooner you start, the sooner you get the hours in. And it's like you need the hours to become good at anything. While in graduate school, I wrote the first draft of a screenplay about a paramedic with Tourette's syndrome. So I really took all of my experiences in terms of, like, the story wasn't really about me at all, but I took all the feelings of having it, and kind of what I went through and how I learned to handle it and put that into that screenplay. And that won me the Nickel Fellowship, which is the Oscar Academy's screenwriting competition. The screenwriting competitions like the Nickel or the Austin Film Festival are easily the best way for a working screenwriter to get their foot through the door in the industry. I believe you can start applying to them as soon as you turn 18. Young people win them all the time. If you're able to place in one of those, agents will reach out to you directly and you'll be able to get an agent very quickly. And having an agent is really the gateway to being able to go up and try to get hired for jobs. The other way to do it is to just go make something on your own. And if you can make something good on your own, you could be 16 years old and it could easily just start your career.
Okay, so when you were in high school, you knew you wanted to do something in film. Were you sure it would be writing? Were you like also in theater and doing acting or any like behind the scenes?
I did a lot of theater in high school because when I was on stage, my Tourette's would disappear. So I did a lot of musical theater. And during those years, I felt, if you had asked me, I would have said I want to be an actor. But when I got to college, I wasn't doing much acting. I was watching tons of movies, and when I got out of college, I started writing. For the first few years of writing, if you had asked me, I would have still said I want to be an actor. But once I won the Nickel Fellowship, I looked back at the previous few years and thought, well, what has my heart been leading me towards, and what have I actually been putting my time and my energy towards? It wasn't acting at all, it was writing. So I think and I've noticed this a lot in the industry, like I'm very fortunate that I have a working career as a screenwriter and I have paying work and I'm able to pay the bills. But it's a tough industry, but it's not impossible to build a career in Hollywood, even now when things are shrinking more than they were before. But it's really good to be able to pivot if it's required. So like I have a friend who was in my screenwriting graduate program, and he's a script consultant, which is the person reading the script with the director, making sure that continuity is always on track, making sure that everybody's saying the right thing, like all of these notes. But he's doing it for some of the best directors in the world. So I think as a kid, I had a global, like the film industry, and I was always moving towards that, and that was kind of enough for me. But then at a certain point, I had to really find out where the true passion kind of like resided in that global framework.
Okay, so I want to ask a question that's tied to something you just mentioned. So you mentioned, like, I think that Hollywood is shrinking. So we have, I think in the last few years, several studios have been bought out by other studios. Disney owns almost everything. Warner Brothers just went on sale. Thought it was going to go to Netflix. That ended up not happening. Looks like it's going to be Paramount. Does that change the landscape for getting projects approved, or like where do you see things going as far as if you're a writer or if you want some other job in the industry and you're trying to get in? Does that change? Is that changing things, or is it just my imagination?
Things are always constantly changing, and Hollywood is also, I think, a place of innovation where new modes of achieving things are constantly being thought up. And I think throughout time in Hollywood, people have always said X is going to be the death of Hollywood. So I don't think it ever ends up actually being true, but it certainly is not the best thing when these big film places coalesce into like monoliths, because if you have a project that you're going to go out and pitch or a script that you're trying to sell, instead of 8 people reading it who might purchase it, you've got 5. And that's never, it would be better to have 8. And that would mean more movies getting made at the end of the day. That being said, I don't think that that's necessarily means, I don't know how much harder it makes the odds of succeeding in the industry actually are, because the odds were always incredibly small to begin with. I think that the key thing, if you have a desire to do it and a love of it, and you think that that's what you want to do with your life, is to start doing it. And every draft, even my first drafts, are bad, so I write them as quickly as possible, and I consider them a template to ask myself what it is I'm trying to say in the first place. And that's been the same process for me from the first script I wrote 20 years ago to today. And the earlier you can start doing that and putting the hours in, the better. And I think the people with the talent who also put the time in will continue to like rise to the top and be able to make careers for themselves.
Okay. All right, well, you've done a number of adaptations, and I think we have some slides. I don't know if I'm supposed to be doing the thing with a clicker here or what, but I think we have, there we go, some slides where we see your notes. Do you want to tell us a little bit, there you go, that looks great. Tell us a little bit about your process when you get hired to do an adaptation of a book like Just Mercy. What is your process for that?
Yeah, so every adaptation is kind of a completely unique process that sort of follows a similar template. With something like Just Mercy, or I adapted The Glass Castle before that. First I read the book and ask myself if I even think it's possible to get it into the framework of a movie. Then I read the book again and I start taking notes, and there's no real scientific way to doing this. It's like, I've got the faces when I think something is particularly visual. I highlight the dialogue when I think it's either dialogue I might use or suggestive of what the dialogue might be ultimately. A lot of the times you read a book and the dialogue works in the book but might not seem conversational enough for a screenplay. And then I just start literally underlining the things that I think are important. And I'll read the book 2 to 3 times before I ever start writing, and then I'll continuously read my way through it as I'm writing it as well. But with any adaptation, you have to look at all of the pieces of the material and kind of figure out what the unique approach is for that particular work.
Okay, well, I think we do have a film clip. In this case, we're not going to watch the film clip of Just Mercy. We're going to watch a film clip of Shang-Chi, which is the Marvel movie that came out in 2021 or 2. Do you want to set this up in any way, this scene?
This is the bus fight from Shang-Chi. And it's every Hollywood movie in general, I don't think we've talked about this in this period, it follows a 3-act structure. So the first half hour of a movie is the first act, the second hour is the second act, the third half hour is the third act, and so you're beginning, middle, and end. And if you are a fan of Marvel movies or big budget movies and you look at the set pieces, you'll see that they also follow a 3-act structure. So if you've seen this movie before, this is the beginning of the second act. And the whole first act of this set piece is all of the setup, which I think had some swearing and stuff, and we cut it out. But it's all of the setup, and they're just about to fight. And then I would call the second act of the set piece the actual fight, and then it cuts off right before the third act, which is like the big explosive finale. And on the left, they're watermarked, which is my name across it because the script came from Marvel, but those are the corresponding script pages.
Who are you?
You got this, bro. My bad. Sorry. What the hell's going on? You really want to talk about this now? Bus driver is down. I'm not going to handle this. Every time I've tried to drive a bus, I get yelled at. The back is about to go. On my signal, make a hard right.
What signal?
Okay. So from my angle, I couldn't read all of the script that was going on over there. So when you're writing that, I imagine you're not writing every single stunt that's going to get put in there, so that's got to be rather collaborative. How do you envision it, and then do you have a process for taking what's in your head and then take little pieces and move them together around, or what do you do?
These big budget movies are really unique, and it depends on where you are along in the process. Like I just did an adaptation of this video game called Saints Row for a director. And on that, I would pitch him the set pieces, or he would pitch me the set pieces, and I'm just designing all 3 acts of the sequence itself and writing it out and getting notes directly from him, but nobody's off making that movie yet. Shang-Chi, I came in to help on the screenplay a few months before they started production, but they had already started building everything in Australia. And the other writer, Dave Callahan, who I'm friends with now, stayed on the project as well. With these Marvel, the bigger budget movies often have multiple writers working on a project, or often replacing each other when like somebody will move on and somebody else will come in. We stayed on it. I stayed on with him and Destin until the end of the process. So when I showed up, for example, with the bus fight, they were already like building the bus and everything that they would need to do for the bus fight, but we hadn't yet necessarily figured out exactly how it worked in the course of the script. So the writers, and Destin, we would be planning the script as a whole and designing everything and writing everything, while Destin would also be directing what's called previs, which is the team of like computer generating artists who are making a visual of the set piece that you can watch ahead of time before they go to actually shoot it. So it's a very like kind of long, complicated process where a ton of incredibly talented people are sort of working on it together, and you're sort of revising and reworking the script over and over as that goes. So sometimes, you know, Destin as the director says, okay, I want to do this, and then he talks it through with his writers. The writers go off and they make a revision of that. The previs people are working on it at the same time. Everybody watches each other's work, and then you tailor the pages of the script to the previs, start writing the dialogue. It's kind of like just this big, huge collaborative thing.
Okay. That it had been a while since I'd seen Shang-Chi. I didn't remember that Dylan from Severance was in the bus.
Yes.
But he's great. Can you tell me something from maybe Shang-Chi or Just Mercy, or something that you feel particularly proud of that you put in there, and you're like, oh, I bet this will be great, and then you're like, yes, it worked.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like I feel like people bring such unique things to everything that you write. It's so fascinating and cool to watch what other people bring to what's on the page. The stuff that I tend to feel like, the proudest of is like almost the bigger structural stuff. There's a character in Just Mercy who's put to death halfway through the movie, and a traditional Hollywood movie has what you call the midpoint. So if you're watching a movie with a bad guy, you will often find out who the actual bad guy is exactly halfway through the movie. If you already know who the bad guy is, you're going to find out what his plan is exactly halfway through the movie. Pretty much any movie that you watch, you can break it down more or less to these things and specifications. So when I watch Just Mercy, I think, the death row scene at the middle of the movie really, I think is this really emotionally powerful moment that people really respond to. And I'm proud of the kind of structural framework that was designed in order to allow the team to kind of get to that place.
Okay. Let's see. We will have do some questions from the audience. So if you guys have been coming up with questions, hold on to them just a few more minutes. We see how much time we have. We still have about 14 minutes. Let's see. So you have worked with Destin, is it Cretin? You've worked with him twice on Just Mercy and Shang-Chi.
I worked with Destin on The Glass Castle, and then The Glass Castle went directly into Just Mercy, and then he started on Shang-Chi, and I joined pretty late in the process.
Okay, well, you seem to have a good working relationship with him then.
Destin and I won the Nickel Fellowship, which we've already talked about, right? At
you mentioned
the screenwriting competition.
Yeah,
we won that at the same time. And so he won with a script called Short Term 12, and he's also a director, so he then went on and made that. It's an incredible movie. I highly recommend everyone watch it. It's about kids in a group home. I think it's on Netflix. It's really, really powerful. And I lived on his couch when I moved to LA, and we were like groomsmen in each other's wedding. And one day he called me and he said, have you read this book, The Glass Castle? This producer, Gil Netter, wants to adapt it, and I hadn't, but my girlfriend, who's now my wife, had it in her bookshelf, so I read it and we started talking about it. And at the end of a bunch of conversations, he said, well, I'll do it, but I'm gonna tell this guy that I would write it with you. And then that same producer produced Just Mercy, and I've worked on some other stuff with him as well over the years. So he sort of smartly kept us employed and working for him on movies that were ultimately getting made. But that also speaks to, in Hollywood and in filmmaking, it's so important to, as a screenwriter, often my job is solitary, and I like that, but also, you know, get out there and start making things, and if you don't want to also direct, find someone who does and collaborate with them. It's so easy to, not so easy, but like if you find somebody you respond to and you both have that creative spark, just get out there and start doing stuff. Because the people who manage to find those kind of partnerships along the way are the people who end up having careers. And Hollywood is incredibly unique, where if you can find one at the age of 18 and produce something that's actually good, like you could be further along in your career than I am in like a year if you create something that people like. And there's more and more these days, there are younger people who are making short films, putting them on YouTube, and that is ultimately leading towards like full-length feature films getting made.
So if anybody out there is thinking that you want to get into Hollywood, I mean, you can do things before you're applying to film school. Maybe, I don't even know if film school is necessarily what you would need to do, but maybe. But what could people do now, before graduating from high school to either learn the structure or get their feet wet or, some advice just to get them going, because the more you do something, the better at it you become.
The best possible thing you could do is to just start doing it, and you've all got iPhones or other phones, and like Sean Baker, who won Best Director and Best Picture with Anora last year, a decade ago, he made a movie called Tangerine, completely on cell phones. A lot of the new zombie movie 28 Years Later was shot on the iPhone. So giant Hollywood movies are being shot on iPhones at this point. So if you are writing and love writing and also feel like you want to direct and have a team of like a group of friends who can do that, just start doing it and make a short film. It probably won't be good your first time, but it'll be better the second time and it'll be better the third time. And I think it's amazing how fast you can pick it up if you're doing that together. If you truly want to be a writer and are more like me, where I never thought, I have this dream of then and going directing it. I thought, I really love writing. I really love the process of it. It's the same thing, but I think less pressure to go out and do it and more to teach yourself the structure of the films and then start putting in the hours of writing. When I applied to graduate school, I wrote my first script. I moved home. I got a part-time job, and I gave myself, did we already talk about this? I gave myself just a year to write. But I ended up finding a mentor through a friend of a friend who had a career in Hollywood, and he gave me notes on my screenplay, and I revised it as fast as humanly possible. And I probably went through 7 or 8 drafts of that with him. That was enough to apply to graduate school, and I got waitlisted. But then I called the school and told them I was moving to their state anyway, and I would just apply again the next year, and they let me in after I had already gotten to Texas. So I think that's just to say my first draft of my first script guaranteed was not good, but I felt something kind of stirring as I was writing it that was important to me, and I kept at it. But you need to put in the hours in order to become good at it, as opposed to just kind of daydreaming about it. And then studying other movies and studying the structure of movies helps a great deal. Even today, when I get hired for a job, if it's a spy thriller, I make a list of like the 20 best spy thrillers, and I watch all of them. When I wrote The Western, I wasn't into Westerns, but I had a list of like 30 Westerns, and I watched through all of them as I was working on the material. And then there are tons of screenwriting books, many of which are fine to teach you the structure that I've talked about. And there's a few lectures in particular. There's an online video lecture by Michael Arndt, who wrote Little Miss Sunshine and one of the Toy Stories, where he breaks down Hollywood structure using Star Wars. It's like edited with clips from the movie. It's super entertaining. And in 45 minutes, he kind of it manages to encapsulate basically everything that you need to know. I rewatch it like once or twice a year.
Okay, I have one last question, and then we'll go to questions from the audience. So, tell me a little bit about like where you see going in the future. I asked you before this thing really started if there's like a dream project for you of doing like an adaptation of a book or something like that, or is there something else that you see happening in the future, perhaps doing Shang-Chi 2 or anything like that, but where do you see yourself going from here?
So as a working screenwriter in Hollywood, I have to be working on 4 to 5 different projects at a time. I'm usually pitching on 1 to 2 things, which is sometimes as much as a 6-month-long process. And I am, at the end of the day, if I get to a final pitch, I'm one of 3 or 4 that might get the job. And then I'll have things where I'm later in the process and I'm at a 3rd draft or maybe even a 4th draft or a 2nd draft, and things that I'm just starting. So for instance, right now I have a project with Andy Samberg and Radio Silence, the guys who made the last 2 Scream movies, or I guess not the last one, but the 2 before that. I'm doing an animated movie for DreamWorks. They're all kind of completely different, but it's like trying to find material that you respond to and what in it speaks to you, just like when you're at the beginning of writing. I wish I could go back and let my younger self know what freedom there is in not having to worry about the career stuff or the financial stuff, and you can literally write whatever speaks to you the most. And I think that if you're trying to break through and get your career started in Hollywood, whether it's with a short film or a screenplay, the stuff that gets noticed the most is the stuff that truly comes from like this deep sort of meaningful place. I don't know if that was really an answer to your question.
Good enough, yeah. All right, so we have, I'm not sure exactly how much time left. 5 minutes. All right, so do we have questions from the audience? And please raise your hand really high. I'm going to stand up so maybe I can see better. Yes, right over here.
What's it like seeing your writing like come to life?
It's surreal. It's interesting because I have quite a long period of time between when I send someone the script and when I see the writing. Also, 90% of the work I work on never ends up getting turned into a movie. So by the time it's actually at like the end of the road and it's become a movie that I'm watching in a theater, it's surreal, it's really cool. There are certainly moments where I'm watching something and I think like, oh, that really worked and it's inspiring and it's cool. I also, by that time, I'm kind of distanced from it. So I think it's really important, like with any writing, that at the end of the day, you're writing it for yourself and you're trying not to worry about how anyone is going to react to it or interact with it.
In the back, yeah, thank you.
Is there any script that you think a director ruined?
No, I think that it's you watch a movie and it takes 90 minutes. Even the worst movies, I'm not saying I've worked on some of the worst movies, but even movies that are like bad were made by a couple of 100 people who were trying as hard as they possibly could to make something good. It has to pass through so many hoops to become a movie that it's a miracle any of them get made. And the fact that any of them end up being good is kind of like a fluke of nature, just because it's such a unique thing where you have so many different people working on a thing, trying to have like this unified vision. So knowing the nuts and bolts, if I see something that doesn't work, I'm probably less thinking something got quote unquote like wrecked and more trying to piece apart the different ways in which it didn't end up working and how it could be done better next time.
Yes, right over here.
Who's your favorite actor to work with?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I have a good answer to it. I think Ethan Hawke is really incredible right now. I think I mean, Daniel Day-Lewis is gone, but I think he was one of the best actors of his generation. I think Jennifer Lawrence is really great. I mean, I think there's so many. Like, I think Timothée Chalamet is incredible and Marty Supreme. Yeah.
All right, we are running out of time. I think one more. Yeah.
Would you ever consider being a director?
For me personally, I really love the act of writing. Like, I did not get into it thinking, and maybe it's because when I was younger, I was like interested in acting, but I didn't get into it thinking, oh, I want to be a director. I think the directors I know who are great, like someone like Destin, is thinking very, very visually. Like, he's closing his eyes and he's thinking, this is the shot, and this is the shot, and this is the shot. And that's its own particular skill. When I'm thinking of a project or I'm thinking of my writing, I feel like I'm feeling it more like a novelist or something, where I'm sort of picturing a feeling and an emotion and the characters. And so for me personally, I'm lucky enough that I have had some success and I continue to have work, and I'll keep writing as long as they'll pay me to do it.
All right, I think the bell is probably going to ring pretty soon. Anybody know for sure?
Thank you.
Thank you all very much.